If you're looking to invest in whiskey, then this might be the video for you. Recently we invested in quite a bit of whiskey, but not in the way that you might think, i.e. in bottles. We actually decided to buy a whole bunch of casks. And if you're interested in investing in whiskey this way, then you should stick around and I'll go through why you should do it, how you should do it, what to look out for, and what it might cost you. Of course, the first question you would ask yourself is why? Why would you want to invest in whiskey? It's probably not going to make you a millionaire, right? Unless you're very, very lucky. The main reason for myself is a bit of diversification, i.e. we have investments in other areas. You might invest in stocks, property, whatever it is. You might be looking to diversify a little bit. What can you buy to diversify that, at the very minimum, holds its value? And if you're lucky, will go up in value. I think in general, the world loves whiskey. It's a fairly safe investment. I think it would be safe to say that it won't go down in value over time. And if you're holding it for long enough, it should only go up in value. Or at the very least, keep its value. The whiskey market is quite a large market. I guess people are not going to stop drinking whiskey. In 2022, it was estimated to be around 62 billion US dollars. And it's estimated to grow in value to around 101 billion US dollars by 2030. Now, whether you believe those numbers or not, I think it's safe to say that it most likely will go up, at least in line with inflation. Another reason is the export market. Export markets like India, for example, China, they do buy a lot of whiskey. And it seems again like this market will most likely only grow. It is quite popular now as well to have a lot of independent and private bottlers that make their own whiskies. So a lot of these independent bottlers will buy their own casks and blend their own whiskies, which they will then sell on the market under their own name. Another bonus, and of course this is not tax advice, and it does depend on where you are and where you live, but in certain countries, for example the UK, whiskey is classified as a declining asset, which means it's capital gains tax free. And this of course applies to it being bought and sold in the cask form. I guess one of the most important aspects is to understand what your expectations are. If you are in this or buying whiskey in casks to make hundreds of thousands of dollars and as a get-rich-quick scheme, this is not what I would advise. And that's one of the things that you'll need to look out for when you do speak to whiskey specialists or brokers about buying casks. One of the important things is to set reasonable expectations and certainly a reasonable time frame. I think if you're going into this with a 5, 10, 15, even 20-year time frame, that's the best position to take. Of course, it filters out all the noise of the market going up and down, and you'll most likely see the best returns. And if you're expecting to make 100% year on year, this is highly unlikely. So keep your expectations reasonable. I think it's safe to say in line with inflation, certainly. The casks will go up in line with inflation. 5% year on year, I would be pretty certain you're going to get 5% year on year. 10%, 15%, maybe, definitely possible. So keep your expectations realistic and have a long time frame. So one of the most important questions, how? How do you invest in whiskey casks? There are many whiskey investment specialists or brokers, let's call them, that will essentially help you source these casks. They will deal with buying them, storing them, insuring them, and eventually at the end, selling them for you. There are many of these brokers to choose from, and myself personally, I must have called at least 4 or 5 of them and probably had an hour-long discussion with each of them before I finally decided on which one to choose. And I think that's one of the most important aspects of this whole process, is that you do your research on these investment specialists. Don't go with the first one. Speak to a whole bunch of them and ask them a lot of questions, and only go with the one that you feel comfortable going with. There are many to choose from. For example, Riverside Whisky, I spoke to them, Cask Traders, VCL Vinters, Whisky Partners, there's a whole bunch. If you search on Google, they will all come up. I'll mention the one that I went with at the end. They were particularly good. I've had a very, very good experience with them, and I'm very happy thus far with the one I chose. Some of them have other special perks for their clients. Some of them offer their clients to go and see their own cask at the warehouse. You can sample your cask, you can taste it. Some of them have distillery tours that they hold, tasting sessions, that kind of thing. So some of them do offer a little bit extra. Of course, there are some things that you need to look out for, and that's why I said before that you shouldn't go with the first broker that you speak to. You should speak to a whole bunch of them first. They are, of course, salespeople, first and foremost, so some of them do feel a bit pushy. You will speak to them and they will tell you they have this awesome cask, it's a Brunahaben, and it's only £5,000, it's new fill, and when you sell that in 10 years it's going to be worth £100,000. Don't buy from them. Also, what you'll find is, of course, once you've spoke to them the first time, they will try and call you the next day, maybe the day after that. They'll send you a few mails and they'll kind of push you, giving you that fear of missing out, telling you that the casks are almost gone and they've only got 5 left and you should buy one right now. So if you feel that they're being a little bit too pushy, I would say maybe give it a think before you go with them. Another contentious subject, and I'm not an expert, is a delivery order. When you buy a cask from these brokers, they will give you a certificate of ownership and of course your invoice. This is enough to say that the cask belongs to you. But of course, if anything should happen to the company, the broker that you're dealing with, are you 100% sure that the cask belongs to you when it comes to transferring it or moving it to another warehouse? The one thing that some of these brokers will offer you as a delivery order, which used to always happen, and I believe now technically they don't have to do it. A lot of them won't give you this delivery order. They will tell you that it's not necessary, the certificate of ownership and the invoice is enough. However, you do have some brokers which will continue to offer you the delivery order. So once you have bought it, they will also send you a certificate of ownership and an invoice. You have obviously bought the cask, but they will also give you a delivery order, which is done through the warehouse. So essentially the warehouse knows that this cask belongs to you, not the company that you have bought it through. So do check if they offer you a delivery order. The whiskey specialist I went with do offer that delivery order, and they set you up with an account with the warehouse, which is an added bonus. They don't charge anything extra for it. It's important to them, it's important to you, it gives you peace of mind, so that's something to look out for. Another question to just ask is about naming rights. So essentially when you buy a cask, it comes from a specific distillery. Let's say it's a Tullibardine. When you come to sell that cask, or when you come to bottle it, you want to be able to put on that bottle that it was distilled at Tullibardine Distillery. And this is what this allows you to do. You cannot, of course, call it a Tullibardine on its own because you are then using their brand, but you can put on the bottle that it was distilled at Tullibardine Distillery. So ask them if you've got naming rights on all the casks. Another thing to check is insurance and storage on your casks, and how much this is going to cost as the years go by, because you're looking to hold this cask for 5 years, 10 years, maybe 15 years. So you want to check how much this is going to be. To be honest, there isn't a big difference between most of these companies as to what they charge for insurance and for storage. I would say the average, most of them do offer the first 5 years, some of them the first 10 years, as part of the price that they're charging for the cask. After that free period, you will then have to pay per year per cask. So if you're going to buy a lot of casks, it can add up. So it is something to check. On average, I would say after speaking to quite a few of these brokers, you're going to be paying anywhere between £50 to £150 per cask per year once that free period is up. So if you've got 10 casks or 20 casks, it can add up to a significant cost per year. Some of them do have a discounted rate as well. If you are somebody who's going to be buying a lot of casks and you do get up to that level, then they will offer you a discounted rate, and it could be 50% of the original cost. Of course, one of the most important parts is how they make their money. When you sell the cask, or they sell it on your behalf, they're going to take a commission. That commission will be a percentage of the price that they sell it for. Again, ask them what that's going to be. Most of them were around about the same, whether that's 5%. Do ask for the specifics though. Is it 5% of the price that they sell it for? Or is it 5% of the profit that you've made on the cask? Because some of them do it a little bit differently. You should distinguish how they make that commission. There was one broker I spoke to and I hadn't a clue how how they made money themselves. It just didn't make any sense to me at all. There was no percentage. They told me that they sell it for a price and I will get the market rate for it. It didn't make any sense to me at all. So if you don't understand it, and if you've asked them 10 times and you still don't understand it, go somewhere else. Kids are playing. They should be happy. This whiskey I'm buying is for them. I suppose that leads me into the one aspect that most people will be waiting for, is how much it costs to buy these casks. Now that of course depends, and you'll hate that answer, but it does of course depend. How old is the casket you're buying? Of course, the older it is, the more expensive it's going to be, like any whiskey. And where does it come from? Which distillery does it come from? Because that will also influence the price. However, if you are like myself and you are looking at a much longer time frame to hold these casks, I am looking at holding them for 5 to 15 years. So I am primarily buying new make spirit. Okay, thank you. So this is brand new spirit that's put in the cask at 0 years old. It's not Scotch whisky yet because it needs to be in there for 3 years in Scotland before it becomes Scotch whisky, and I'm going to hold that. And I think if you're buying new make spirit, this is where you can probably make the most on your money. If you're buying new make spirit, I would say that regardless of the distillery, you're going to be somewhere in that £1,500 to £3,000 mark. I think if you buy a cask for somewhere in between these two prices, then you can be sure that you probably haven't been scammed. Some of these brokers, when I was speaking to them, were trying to sell me new make spirit for £5,000 a cask. For example, one of them was a Brunahaben. It didn't sit right with me, it didn't feel right, it felt awfully expensive. Not only that, but they were very pushy in trying to sell them out. I found that actually quite a few of them were trying to push the Brunahaben specifically. So it wasn't difficult to get because multiple brokers were selling it. And they were all selling it for anywhere between £5,000 to £5,500. Because they were all selling it and they were all so pushy, it just set a red flag off for me. Not only that, but one of them were telling me that I would be able to sell it for, I think he said, £140,000 in the future, which seems unreasonable. All of the new make spirit that I bought was somewhere between £1,500 and £2,500. And I think if you hold that for 10 to 15 years, you're almost guaranteed to make some money on it. For example, if you buy a cask for £2,000 and you hold it for 10 years, and let's assume it goes up at 5% year on year. At the end of the 10 years, it'll be worth £3,200 or so. I think that's far too conservative. I think you're far more likely to get 10%. It's probably quite a safe number year on year. 10% for 10 years, the cask that you bought at £2,000 will be worth £5,200. Now, I think these expectations are more than reasonable. And if you're going to go into this, you should certainly, like I mentioned before, look at it with a far longer time frame. And this will filter out all the noise, and you're almost guaranteed to make something on it. Of course, one of the worries is how they sell it, and if they can sell it. Now, that doesn't worry me too much. There will always be demand for whiskey, and there will always be private and independent bottlers that will like to buy these whiskies so that they can go and blend their own brand of whiskey and sell these to people. They will always exist. People will always love to drink it. And so for that reason, I'm not too concerned about that. And hey, if you can't sell it, which you will be able to, but if you can't, well, you can bottle it yourself and have a big party. Or I can bottle some and I can use it for my kid's wedding in, let's say, 20 years. So you will probably be wondering which broker, well, let's not call them a broker, let's call them a whiskey specialist, because that's more than what they are. Which one I went with, and the one I went with was Spirit Filled. Now, the reason I went with them is they were actually the last one that I called. I think they were the 5th one I called, and instantly I knew that this was a very good, very passionate company that really knew what they were talking about and had a passion in investing in whiskey and didn't just want to sell you a cask. For me, the most important reason was that they weren't pushy at all. They didn't try to FOMO me, the fear of missing out. They didn't try to sell me casks that were in limited supply and there was only 5 left and I had to grab it now, otherwise everybody else would grab one. They did none of this. They essentially had a discussion with me. What's my time frame? What kind of casks they have and they can offer, where they get them from. They went through everything that I've discussed when it comes to insurance, storage, where they're stored, what kind of price I should be paying for a cask that's reasonable, what to expect year on year. And because everything was reasonable, that's the main reason I felt that they were trustworthy. And they do have their own YouTube, and you can actually go on there and see the warehouse that they store them at. And I haven't been there yet, but I do plan to go sometime in the future, because they do encourage you to go and see your cask. And this is of course a very important aspect of the whole experience, I would say. We've bought quite a few casks already. I think I'm at 10 at the moment, most of which is new make. I did buy one 5-year-old and one 9-year-old, just so that I could maybe have a shorter time frame on these casks. And for the new make spirit, I would probably be looking to hold these for, I would say, 10 to 15 years. I guess one of the things is how old you are as well. You know, I'm in my mid-30s, so I'm looking for something that I can buy now and forget about. And then when I come to retirement age, I could start offloading these. So it depends what your investment strategy is, of course, what you're looking to make and how quickly you're looking to make it. But if I'm honest, forgetting about the whole investment side of it, making money, whiskey's a very interesting industry, isn't it? A lot of tradition and heritage and culture. When I was younger, I used to be a tour guide at a distillery during the summer, so I've always had a little bit of a passion for it. And obviously, being a Scotsman, I do like a bit of Scotch every now and again. But if it's something that you're looking to do, I would say it's, as long as you're reasonable and you have reasonable expectations, it is quite an interesting line of investment. If you do have any questions, like I say, I'm not an expert, I've done my research, but I'm willing to help. Just write them below and I'll try to answer them as best as I can. It's quite a fun journey. Something that obviously the cask will be a part of your life for as long as you want it to be. But of course my advice always is take your time, do your research, there's no rush, and enjoy the process.